The sirens hit before her voice did. 1 second, I'm standing in the lake I've owned for years, knee-deep, guiding a refill pipe from my private well. Sun rising, boots wet, just enjoying the peace. The next, I hear her. There he is. That's the man stealing community water. I already called the cops. Yeah, that happened. I looked up to see Karen, queen of the HOA, standing by the fence. Sunglasses glinting like she was about to serve justice herself. And sure enough, right on cue, a sheriff cruiser rolled in, tires crunching on gravel. 2 deputies stepped out, already exhausted by whatever drama they just walked into. Karen wasted no time, flapping her stack of HOA rules like she was quoting constitutional law. He's draining the community water system. One officer gave me a tired look. Sir, mind showing us what's going on? I just smiled, wiped my hands on my jeans, and said, might be easier if I show you. We walked over to the utility shed on the edge of my land, on my side of the fence, mind you. I opened the door, and inside was a network of valves, pipes, and a hum so familiar it practically sang to me. The deputy's flashlight scanned the metal tags. Sir, he said, this is a private well. Karen froze. That's impossible. The HOA owns that property line. He raised an eyebrow. You got proof, sir? Oh yeah, I nodded. Keep watching. Then it got real interesting. Because the main HOA water line, the one that fed all those pristine lawns and her precious petunias, well, turns out it ran straight through my land. No easement, no permit, just buried decades ago when no one bothered to check. And just as the deputy started wrapping his head around it, his radio crackled. Dispatch, major pressure drop reported at the HOA's main leak, possibly near the east boundary. I looked down, right where Karen was standing. Seconds later, the ground gave a low groan, then BM, a geyser of muddy water shot straight into the air, drenching Karen head to toe. Her fancy HOA paperwork turned to pulp in her hands. The deputy looked at the mess, then at her. Ma'am, I think you need to make a few calls. That should have been the end of it, but not with Karen. The next morning, the whole place was eerily quiet. No sprinklers, no lawnmowers, not even Karen barking at teenagers for using unapproved mulch. I knew something was brewing. And sure enough, by 8 a.m., there she was at the fence, pacing with a phone glued to her ear. My buddy Dave rolled up on his ATV. Brace yourself, he said. Karen's telling folks you sabotaged the HOA water line and are hoarding water in your lake. I nearly choked on my coffee. She really said hoarding? Yep, Dave grinned. Emergency HOA. Meetings at 2. She's dragging in a county inspector. At 2 p.m., the circus began. Karen had set up folding chairs, a banner that said Water Justice for All, and was delivering a speech like she was running for governor. That's when the inspector pulled up, clipboard, boots, no time for nonsense. Karen shoved soggy HOA documents at him, declaring I was draining their system. He glanced through the papers, then sighed. Ma'am, these are HOA bylaws. They don't override county water rights. Karen blinked, thrown off. He turned to me. You got your well permit? I handed it over. Stamped. Legal. Dated back to 2016. Then the twist. When the inspector examined the leak site near the fence, he found not 1, but 2 pipes. The second line wasn't even on county records. That's strange, he muttered. Turns out, the HOA's been unknowingly drawing from an old, forgotten city pipeline, one that runs right beneath my land. A relic from a failed municipal project in the 70s. And when the HOA's developer cut corners, they tapped into it illegally. Karen looked like she might faint. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. But it got worse. The county checked historical records. That unregistered line? It connected to an old underground pumping station, one buried deep in the woods behind my lake. Forgotten. Sealed. Until now. So naturally, I went to find it. Through the trees, beyond the lake, I found a rusted metal hatch stamped, property of Municipal Water Authority. Do not tamper. Of course, I opened it. And what I found was insane. A massive underground chamber, steel pipes, rusted gauges, and a plaque with the name Project Clear Flow, Phase 2. I brought Rick, the inspector, back the next morning. He nearly fell over when he saw it. This isn't just a pump station, he said. This is an old city reservoir, and it's still holding clean, mineral-rich groundwater. An entire underground lake, right beneath my property. That meant the HOA's been surviving for decades off water they weren't even supposed to have, drawn through pipes they didn't own. Across land they never got permission to use. And guess who owned the only legal access point? Me. City crews came out, confirmed it all, sealed the illegal lines. And then came the kicker. The reservoir was reclassified as a protected water source. I was named legal steward. And yes, compensated handsomely. Meanwhile, Karen? She was voted off the board, replaced by George, the quiet guy who always sat in the back row during meetings. First thing he did was offer me a legal settlement for an easement. 30 grand. I accepted. Peace had a price, and that seemed fair. But I wasn't done learning. Because just before Rick signed off the final report, he showed me one last thing. Deep inside that rusted pumping station, there was a second, smaller valve. One not listed on any plan. It led into the woods. To what? We don't know yet. But I'll tell you this. When you live on land this old, with pipes and secrets running beneath your feet, you start to realize something. Sometimes the fights we think are about control end up revealing something deeper. Something buried. Karen tried to own the water. The neighborhood. Me. But in the end, the land spoke for itself. And I listened. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments. And tell me this. What would you have done if your HOA was stealing water from under your land? Would you take the cash or take him to court? I'll be reading every reply. Let's talk. It should have ended there. The leaks, the hearings, the lawsuits. The pipe that wasn't supposed to exist. All of that should have been enough, right? But something about that second valve Rick found in the chamber, it kept nagging at me. It wasn't labeled, wasn't on any of the maps, and didn't lead toward the subdivision or back into the old city line. It headed out the opposite direction, straight into the woods behind the reservoir. Now, here's the thing. I grew up on this land. My dad used to tell me stories about the old farm hands, about buried cables and old tunnels from back in the 50s. But nothing, and I mean nothing, ever mentioned a hidden water line heading north. So the next morning, I did what any stubborn man with too much curiosity and not enough sense would do. I grabbed a shovel. I hiked out past the reservoir site, followed the soft bend of the ridge where that second pipe seemed to point. The soil changed underfoot, drier, looser, like it had been disturbed once, then packed back down over time. After about an hour, I struck something. Not metal, but stone. A flat slab, maybe 3 feet long, and carved right into it was a circle, almost like a manhole cover, but older. Handmade. I cleared the dirt, popped the lid, and inside was a narrow concrete tunnel, bone dry, but sloped and lined with pipe brackets. I dropped my flashlight down and saw it, another valve. This one newer, bolted into place. And it was open. I followed it, crawled maybe 30 feet until it widened into a square chamber, lined with brick. In the far corner, a rusted steel tank. And on the tank, a label so faded I could barely read it. Clear Flow Phase 3, Emergency Reservoir Diversion. Authorized access only. Phase 3. I climbed back out, boots caked in dirt. Heart racing. This wasn't just a forgotten line. This was infrastructure, part of something way bigger than anyone realized. I called Rick. He showed up in 20 minutes flat, brought a geosurveyor with him this time. They scanned the ground, traced the path of the pipe, and their equipment started pinging like a sonar screen. Rick just shook his head. Sam, this isn't just a feeder pipe. It's part of an old emergency system, like a pressure relief grid, probably installed to redirect overflow from the main municipal line during floods or droughts. But it's active? I asked. He nodded slowly. It shouldn't be, but it is. Now here's where it gets weird. The next day, a man in a black SUV showed up. No county plates. Said he was with the state water management office, flashed a badge I'd never seen before, and asked me if I'd discovered any unusual underground features on my property recently. I didn't answer, because I've watched enough of these stories play out to know when people start asking questions before giving answers, something's off. That night, I went back to the little chamber myself, just to check, and someone had bolted the hatch shut. From the outside, the padlock was new, still shiny. I didn't call Rick this time. I called my lawyer. We filed an official claim of ownership for all access structures tied to the clear flow system within my boundary. That included the old pump station and the chamber I found out back. That was Thursday. By Monday, I had a cease and desist letter from a law firm representing a now-defunct water company, one that hadn't operated since 1999. They claimed historical rights to the underground infrastructure and said it had been part of a classified drought control project. Classified. I sent the letter straight to Rick. He called me the next morning. His voice was tense. "Sam," he said, "there's something you need to know. The Clear Flow project. It wasn't just about water. Apparently, the original contractor, this guy Granger, whose name we found on the reservoir documents, had once worked for a government contractor, specialized in underground hydrodynamics and emergency infrastructure for, well, let's just say not all of it was public record. And now, there were signs the system under my land might have been the last remaining. Access point to something bigger, something buried. That week, the city halted all further excavation, not because of danger, but because the state got involved. 2 inspectors came by, quiet as ghosts, walked the site, took soil samples, scanned the terrain with equipment I didn't even recognize. One of them wore a vest that read Geo-Environmental Recon Unit. Ever heard of that? Me neither. When they left, one of them looked at me and said, "You may want to install a gate." A gate? That night, I sat on my porch again, just like I did in the beginning. The lake shimmered, both the one above ground and the one now below. The trees rustled. The frogs croaked. It was peaceful, but not quiet. Because deep in the woods, I heard something. A low hum. Not natural. Not wind. It sounded like machinery, turning. Karen doesn't come around much these days. She still sends HOA newsletters, but now they're polite, even helpful. She even brought me cookies last week, like that would erase a year of war across the fence. But she knows. Everyone does now. This land isn't just mine. It holds history and maybe secrets that none of us were ever meant to find. And now that the state's involved, I'm starting to wonder if Karen wasn't the worst thing to come out of this mess. Because if that pipe system really does lead somewhere deeper, what else is buried under this lake? And what happens when someone finally decides to open that last door? Let me know in the comments. What would you do if your backyard hid something the state doesn't want you to see? Would you dig deeper? Or seal it shut? I've got flashlights and I'm not done yet. Not even close.